guys, this is Jean here from Happy Indulgence, and today I'm going to go through my November wrap-up because it's now December and that's totally crazy and I can't believe Christmas is around the corner. So during November I read 10 books. It actually wasn't that good of a reading month, even though I found a few books that I absolutely loved. There were quite a few that I was super disappointed in, but at least I'm not in a slump, right? As usual, I'm going to go through all the books from the books I love the most to the books I love the least, and yes, hopefully you guys find a new book that you love. The first book that I read is Germanah by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. As you guys know, this is one of my favorite books of all time. This was my fourth reread. So my reread was actually on audiobook and I cannot recommend it enough. There's sound effects, there's like sounds of gun shooting and things exploding, and there's a lollipop song. So I definitely recommend listening to this on audiobook if you haven't already. So my next 5-star read is God's Grave by Jay Kristoff. Oh my gosh, for anyone that said this book is better than Nevernight, I now know what you mean, because in God's Grave everything is just escalated and it all connects so well to Nevernight. While reading it, it was just completely thrilling. Mia is completely bloody and brutal, and she's like a freaking gladiator slave, and you know that she wants to exact revenge, and you just know it's going to come and it's going to be awesome. So I absolutely loved God's Grave. I thought everything was A+. It had a bit of a different feel from Nevernight because it didn't really have the magic school or assassin school setting, but I loved it. It was sarcastic, the banter was hilarious. And yes, a full review is actually up on my blog at Happy Indulgence Books. The next book that I read and loved is This Mortal Coil, and this is by Emily Savada, and I really wanted to read this not only because I've got the beautiful ARC edition, but also because Amy Kaufman also recommended this as one of her favorite reads, and I definitely trust her opinion on books. So this book absolutely blew me away. I can't believe it hasn't been hyped further because, oh my gosh, the science fiction in here was absolutely fantastic. So This Mortal Coil is about a girl who is genetically modified, and the rest of the world is genetically modified to prevent themselves from gaining this disease that has created these rabid zombie-like things. The technology here when it comes to DNA manipulation, when it comes to futuristic technology, when it comes to viruses, and how it all coexists, it was just built so well and it was so realistic. And when I got to the end of the book, I found out that the author is actually an astrophysicist and she's also studied mathematics, but everything in here is just built so well. If you've watched Resident Evil, this would probably be a similar sort of world that I'm trying to describe, and gosh, I love This Mortal Coil so much. It's definitely a book that I would reread and recommend to people who love sci-fi and who love science and technology. Next book that I read and loved was This Color Project by Sierra Abrams, and I don't read a lot of contemporary books, but for when I actually do pick them up, it's either going to be a love or hate affair. But This Color Project, it gave me so many feels. It was just about this girl and she gets to know a guy who's running a charity project, and he was just so full of compassion and he really wanted to make these people's lives better. And for her, she's just trying to figure out what she wants to do. Like the way they got to know each other, it's just filled with so many cute and fluffy feels, but then the book does take a turn and then it explores grief, it explores hurt feelings, it explores distant family relationships, and it even explores a couple breaking up and what happens when they decide that there's other things in their life that they want to focus on. And there's not a lot of that in YA novels, so I actually really enjoyed it, and by the end my heart was just so full and I had so many feels. So I definitely recommended The Color Project. So it's funny because all the books I read this month, it goes from like super awesome reads that I absolutely love down to 3 2-star reads. So one of those was Because You Love to Hate Me, 13 Tales of Villainy by Ameriie. and this is an anthology about villains, and it was actually done in collaboration with some famous booktubers, and I really wanted to read it because who doesn't love villains, right? As always, I think with anthologies it's always hit or miss when you go to each and every story. There were a few stories here that I absolutely love. Like, I love the one by Cindy Pon, which is like a Medusa but set in an Eastern Asian setting, and then I really love V.E. Schwab's book about death, and it kind of reminded me of The Book Thief. And I also loved Adam Silvera's story, which was like Harley Quinn, Joker type relationship, but gender bent. Most of the stories in here, I kind of think they were a bit forgettable, but that's probably the usual. But because of how much I enjoyed some of these stories, I still recommend giving this one a read. So I gave this one 3 stars. Another book I gave 3 stars to is 521 by Holly Bodger. This book is actually a really unique story. It's set in dystopian India, and it's about a girl who is being sold off to the highest competitor because in this dystopian India there aren't that many females around, and there's such a male overpopulation that they have to compete to the death in order to win a female's hand in marriage. So it was a really unique setting. There was a lot of fantastic diversity. And what I loved about it is that it's written in half verse, which is from the girl's point of view, and there's a guy's point of view which is written in prose, so you know, your usual chapter paragraphs, and I thought that was really unique. There's a lot of female empowerment, and it's really feminist, and it really makes you think about the world as it is when it comes to overpopulation and when it comes to female rights, especially when it comes to marriage. But I did think it could have been longer and it could have fleshed out a bit more of the world. Another 3-star read for me that I really enjoyed. So the next book that I read is Little Monsters by Kara Thomas, and this is a psychological thriller about toxic friendships. Like, there's this girl in a best friend relationship and she's gone missing, and you sort of kind of want to put the pieces together to find out what happened to her, whether it was murder, whether she's ran away, and whether anyone that this girl knows had something to do with it. So I found it super thrilling and super disturbing, and I loved hearing from the unreliable narrator, and I loved hearing the diary entries, and just how, like, at face value someone appears to be like in a certain way, but then you actually don't know what's going on in their minds. The ending here was like super satisfying. I really did not see it coming. There were so many red herrings thrown in the way. So yes, it's just a psychological thriller that I really enjoyed, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Now onto the reads that I found quite disappointing, and the first one is Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and this is actually the ARC edition. I was so disappointed with Renegades. I mean, when you have superheroes who have underlying motives, who have secret identities and villains, what could go wrong? So in over 500 pages, we learn about 2 different opposing villains or 2 different opposing heroes, and they have ulterior motives. But the thing about this book that made me not enjoy it was the slow pace of it. I mean, it's about this corrupt society, and there's these renegades that have arisen, and they're pretty much superheroes that everyone counts on to save them. Then there's also anarchists who want to infiltrate and take down this society, and one of the girls is from there. There was so much slow world building, but I actually didn't find the complex that overcomplicated, or like it didn't really need to take over such a large chunk of the book, and I found it really slow and tedious to read. And the fact that we already know what their secret identities are at the start of the book, it kind of ruins a lot of the intrigue, and there's a lot of awkward moments because then it's kind of like backtracking to explain to the reader what they're feeling at the time. I was really disappointed with Renegades because I love the Lunar Chronicles series and I love superheroes. So anyway, I do think it's a really slow start to the series. Maybe it'll get better later on, but I'm not really that impressed thus far. I gave Renegades 2.5 stars. Another book that I gave 2 stars to was Wild Beauty by McLemore. This was another book that I was super disappointed about, especially since I loved When the Moon Was Ours by the same author. The whole book is pretty much just descriptions of flowers, and that's it. I mean, the story isn't that complex. It's about a group of girls who grow flowers, and there's a guy that appears, and they want to find out where he's from and how he's connected to their family. And that was pretty much what the book was about. There's some great LGBTQIA representation, so each and every one of these girls, some that are bisexual, and a lot of them have a crush on one of their friends or cousins. It's pretty much just all about beautiful, flowery descriptions, which is great when you feel like it, but I struggled with how slow it was and how there pretty much was no other plotline aside from that. Another book I was super disappointed in was The Reader by Traci Chee. The Reader was about a book where reading just doesn't exist and where books don't exist, but the main character has a book and it's pretty much contraband and she's trying to hide it from the people chasing her. I really did like the magic in here, which I knew I was going to like, but I felt like the story was again quite tedious to read. I wasn't connected to any of the characters. How can you have a world where people don't read and where they can't get educated, but yet it's completely normal, like they are educated? Like, how did you get there? How do you speak so well? How are you so eloquent? How do you know things? Like, it didn't really explain that aspect of it, which I thought was super important. And the magic in this world was kind of just there, and you didn't really know why either. So I was quite disappointed with it. These are all the books that I read during the month of November, and there were a few favorites and a few I didn't really enjoy that much. If you end up picking up any of these books or you have any thoughts or comments on my video, please leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more. Definitely check out my recent video, guys. And yes, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.